Hello, lovely people, and welcome to another episode of The Wellness Way. And I've got another absolutely fantastic guest on today. And I'm so excited to have this doctor in the house, Dr. Sebastien Lomas, who is a biological dentist. Now, I was trying, when I started my healing journey, I was trying to find a biological dentist for about 4 blooming years. And I'm not actually sure I have one now. So I can't tell you how excited I am to meet this man. So, Dr. Seb, I just thank you so much for coming on the show today. The first question I would like to ask you is, how do you become a biological dentist? And indeed, what is one?
Very interesting question. But firstly, thank you so much for doing everything you're doing, getting the word out there, trying to help empower people to take control over their own health, right? Make the right decisions before you make irreversible ones. And then it takes a bit of work to undo them. And that's what I spend my life doing, trying to undo work that is kind of not so beneficial to our human organism, right? And putting our place shifting to the wrong way of the dynamic equilibrium. But I guess we'll talk about that later. And for me, biological dentistry. Okay, so there's no official qualification really. It's more about your own passion, your own research, your own development. There is probably like five pillars of biological dentistry in my own mind that I've currently up to date in this year, so 2022. And that is biocompatibility of materials, that is the structural integrity of the airway and how your teeth meet together. And then, of course, the infections or hidden infections within the jawbone. And then, of course, using safer modalities of healing, like your ozone, your lasers, your non-invasive things, your essential oils, your homeopathy, things that are going to influence your system a bit more gently than some of the harsher chemicals that, most people use in the medical world. And then you kind of integrate them together and you come up with biological dentistry. But I started the same way every dentist starts. And actually, my journey was very convoluted for me to go on a journey to understand that the path that I was on was because I was very chemical, pharmaceutical mindset. I did a chemistry degree, but as a kid, I always wanted to be a dentist. And after this chemistry degree, I went on this healing journey of my own in pharmaceutical medicine, not really touching myself or my journey of healing and making me worse, if anything, actually. So then
Yeah.
I learned that the natural way is actually takes longer, but worth it in the end, because you could develop these new reference points of where you can be, how well you can feel. And then I thought during this process, went to this top immunologist in London because my immune system was just so shot and rubbish. And he said, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "Oh, interesting question. I'm working for an IT company in London and yeah, not enjoying it that much." He said, "Well, what did you always want to do?" I was like, "Well, I did always want to be a dentist." So, "Okay, what degree have you got?" I said, "Well, I did chemistry." And he said, "Did you do well?" I said, "Yeah, I got a first actually." He said, "Well, I'm going to put you in contact with the King's College admissions lead then." And that was my journey of getting back into dentistry
Oh
on
my
this
God, how
illness journey
wonderful.
that I went into. So but I went in with my eyes wide open then because I knew that there was this natural healing way in functional medicine happening. And then I thought, well, surely we can heal through our teeth and through what's going on there. And for me, it started with my wife having four of her teeth removed when she was in her 16, 17-year-old self, and everything, braces being straightened and corrected. And that turned into her early 20s into chronic headaches, migraines, head, neck, shoulder pain, problems breathing, chronic mouth breather, and all of those things just triggered me into I want to help people breathe properly and heal properly. And then my own journey with my microbiome disbalance and metal fillings in my mouth led me to actually healing that part of me too. So that's how it all knitted together. And I spent my conventional learning shadowing all of the dentists in my reading weeks and my half terms and my study periods and learning to all these top biological dentists in the UK. And there's not many of them, as you know.
No,
So
there's not
I
many.
had to travel.
Yes, and it is something we really need to get out there. And I think the first time I ever heard the term was when I started my healing journey. And I watched the docuseries, The Truth About Cancer. So I don't know if you know this series, but it's
I've watched it. I spent my honeymoon watching that because I was so addicted to it. We went on this lovely long honeymoon. Oh no, it was engagement when we got engaged somewhere in on a holiday. And we spent we were in this lovely healing retreat of the world in Bali in the middle of the jungle, and we were just watching this docuseries on our iPhone. This was several years ago now, but we're so addicted to it. It's just
it,
that's what opened my mind too.
It's extraordinary. I mean, I've said it before on this podcast, but I've just kept having those fuck me moments where you just cannot believe that this information isn't common knowledge. And I watched a lot of the series they did. They did The Truth About Detox, The Truth About Vaccines, and then they did a special on medicine in Asia. And they were talking to a top homeopath in Singapore. And he was saying that he would never, ever treat any patient if they had amalgam fillings in their mouth. And I kind of thought,
Wow.
oh shit, I got two of them. And you know, the really annoying thing is that I didn't even need them. I'd never had a filling in my life. And then when I was 16, I moved to college in London, and my mum said, go and get a dentist. So I did. Went along. You just go, I'll go to the dentist like I go to the
Yeah.
doctor. And I had two fillings. I phoned my mum in tears and said, have you just given me two fillings? And she said, no, come home. So I went to see my old dentist back at home, and he said there was no need for you to have those. And I've never had a filling since. And
Mm,
I'm 60 next year. So I've had two
mm,
fillings in my life on the same day with a rogue dentist. And I'm not saying all
wow.
dentists are bad, but it pissed me off.
Yeah.
But what I needed to do when I saw this docuseries, I thought I've got to get them out. So can you tell us why we should not be having these fillings in our mouths?
Absolutely. Well, conventional dentistry is using their understanding of teeth in just a function way. What creates what prevents you from losing your teeth, to fill the holes, and in your case, not even fill the holes, create holes, and then actually what's going to allow you to chew your food still. And they look at what's probably the best material for that structurally. And if you look at amalgam, it's pretty good. It lasts forever. It's so toxic, no bacteria can get around it. But the problem is you don't look at the whole human and how toxic that can be to you. And there's two effects that I don't like about it. The first one is the actual dysbiosis of the microbiome, because if you think about mercury in your mouth, if you've, I think the FDA last year or the year before released a statement saying 60% of the population should not have these in their mouth. People with neurological conditions, people with liver disease, kidney disease, and anyone over the age of 60 or under the age of 18. So that rules out a lot of people, right? And no one checks to see if you've got them after when you start getting older, because there's more of a neurotoxin, right? Mercury.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the dysbiosis of the microbiome, the way that it does that is because mercury is so toxic, it's like an antibiotic being in your mouth all the time. And I spoke about the beginning about the dynamic equilibrium. So you've got good bugs pushing that way, bad bugs pushing that way. And you want them in, well, you want the good outwearing the bad. And if you've got something that's influencing the bad bacteria, like if you think about antibiotic all the time, it kills both good and bad, and then eventually only the antibiotic resistant bugs can come in, right, and live. So you're forcing your microbiome to not thrive for good bacteria that remineralize your teeth, support your healing processes. You're pushing it in the direction of the bad bacteria learning how to survive this and only be available to live in these really toxic environments and metabolize these heavy metals, become anaerobic and cause disease. And then, of course, what you're doing is you're swallowing 800 to 2,000 times a day. So you're taking a dose of those bad bacteria day in, day out, down your throat, into your gut, into your microbiome, and then slowly over time. It's never a quick fix, is it? It's a big bang. This happens very gradually.
Yeah.
And then what we've got to realize is that when we turn off the tap and remove those fillings safely, then you've got to rebalance your system as well. And that takes time as well. So first is the microbiome disbalance. And then second is the direct toxicity problems with mercury. There's no place for it in our human body. We don't use it for any cellular reaction. We actually have to detoxify from it. And when we can't detoxify, people with the MTHFR gene, people with the APO4 gene, they actually can't detox from mercury at all. So then their body stores it in places where it's no good. And it then starts disrupting those cells and causing toxicity in them. So like your nerve cells or your liver cells, and then they don't function well. So in the best case, someone can detoxify from it and they're using their liver to get rid of it all the time. And that just uses a percentage of what their daily energy is to detox. Could be 10%, could be 5%, could be 50%, and push you over the limit for chronic fatigue, chronic inflammatory conditions, right?
Yep.
Worst case, you're completely toxic and you can't get rid of it at all. And it's putting it into the places where you don't want it in your body, in your fat cells, in your liver cells, in your nerve cells. And that causes its diseases of its own. So there's so many reasons not to have them, right?
Yes, no, I mean, they are very, very toxic. But then the problem is getting them out. So I went to see a dentist that I couldn't find a biological dentist. So I just went to see one that a friend recommended. And I said, can you do this safely, proper oxygen, because you're meant to kind of have oxygen so you're not inhaling it.
Mm.
And they said, oh no, we do it properly, we do it properly. And I rock up and all they did was open the window. I go, I'm sorry, where's the oxygen? What are you doing to protect me? And I didn't really have any protection. So can you
Wow.
talk us through the procedure and what you need to be asking for? Because there'll be a lot of people watching and listening to this that have got these incredibly toxic fillings in their mouth, and just be kind of wondering, how do I get it out? So what are the questions that you have to ask a dentist? What are you looking for to have it done safely?
The most important thing is, when you put this metal into your mouth and it's in an alloy state and it's got liquid mercury in it, and when you take it out and you drill it and it creates mercury vapors, they're the times that you really need to be super cautious. Because when it's in your mouth as an alloy, it's releasing nano amounts day in, day out, like 10 to the -9, but you still got to deal with it. And that's exacerbated by clenching, grinding on them, hot, cold drinks, and EMFs cooling and vibrating these things, because obviously they're metals and they attract it like an
Yeah.
antenna. So what you need to do is, there's a protocol that was developed in the 90s, and it's the International Association of Medicine and Toxicology. And they've created a protocol called the SMART protocol, which is the safe mercury amalgam removal technique. And it develops year on year because all the new stuff come out. So my mentor, when he started, they were just using really high volume aspiration, some special mask and airflow on the nose. Whereas now what we do is we give binders before, during, and after the procedure, just in case any gets into the system. We use a rubber
Sorry,
sheet.
I'm just gonna stop you there. So when you're talking about binders, are you talking obviously a binder for the heavy metals? So
Yeah,
which one would you use? I mean, do you use something as basic as spirulina and chlorella, or are you using zeolite? What or clay?
interesting. So I tend to keep whatever we're doing internally. So the vapor, you put the oxygen on so you don't get vapor through your nose. But internally, if you're swallowing or doing anything, then I don't want to go in and bind inside the bloodstream, because I don't want to influence any Herx reaction or detox reaction. So I normally just use, it's like a modified clay / charcoal, which comes out of Germany. It's called Toxiprevent, and it's got a patent to bind to mercury in Germany. So they just have, it's in like a sachet, and you have a big swish around your mouth. So if any goes in your mouth, it gets in there, and you swallow a bit. So when it gets in your gut, it binds to it. And then after the procedure, we swish around for about a minute and swallow it as well. We used to, and they used to
Brilliant.
recommend spirulina. But the problem with spirulina, it gets into other cells and binds to bits of heavy metals elsewhere. And then it could potentially drop it if the body's not ready to detoxify. So I don't
Ah,
like kind
okay.
of overwhelming the system. I kind of just say, let's just deal with what we've got today to minimize the exposure that you would have got. So I try and keep everything in the oral cavity and in the digestive system, not passing through the gut barrier. So it's a bit larger to bind onto those things. But yeah, it's a great question. You can even use
Fascinating.
charcoal. Charcoal's fine as well. I've just got a modified version of it.
And would you actually recommend that people use this anyway? Because we're living in a world full of heavy metals, we're being hit left, right, and center. So is this a protocol that you would actually say to your patients, do you know what? Just do this every week, do a bit of a detox and
Yeah, I mean, I periodically detox. The problem is, if you're super ill, I always recommend doing it with a functional doctor or a certified nutritionist, so they can actually walk you through where you're at and how to start cleansing your system, because you don't want to be binding unless you're ready.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Detox is, a lot of people, New Year comes, which is not a time you're meant to be detoxing. It's a time you're meant to be resting and digesting
Yeah.
and being in behave. But everybody
Yes,
goes, I want a lettuce leaf and I'm going to detox. And
I know.
but if you don't do it, if you're doing a really big detox, I always believe it should be done under supervision, because the body is a
Yeah,
funnel, and you've got your little bum hole at the bottom and you're trying to push everything out. And if your system isn't working properly,
yeah,
it's just all backing up in your body. It's
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And when
So
you're trying to get rid of heavy metals, it's really important that they've got absolute clear access to get them out.
absolutely. And then, of course, what comes with heavy metals is fungus and parasites. So you want to be, dealing with them too at the same time, because they a lot of the time go, parasites hide behind heavy metals. So sometimes if you draw the heavy metals out of the body, then the parasites release all of their endotoxin because they're not happy in their environment anymore, they're not metabolizing. So then you get like a detox Herx reaction, which then makes you feel ill, like flu-like symptoms, and it's really interesting. So it's like it's a mastery in itself, being able to detox well. But and I'm a big believer in 90% of the time you should live knowing how you should live, and then 10% of the time you should relax, right?
Yeah, I kind of do it on the 80-20 rule.
Nice.
I hit myself so hard for so many years that
Yeah,
my mentor actually said to me, you're doing more damage to yourself with
I
the
agree.
stress that you
I
have
agree. I agree. I
over
agree.
everything you put in your mouth. And you're just doing a lot of stress, so chill a bit. So I have done that.
And that's
um
part of the healing journey itself, though, isn't it, Pippa? So,
yeah, no, it is. Absolutely. So the next thing I'd love to talk to you about, because I'm quite new. I've only learned about this about 6 months ago. So I'm not an expert on any of this, but I know just a little bit about it, and I would love to know more. And I know that you do a lot of this, and it's ozone therapy. So
mm.
could you explain to us what ozone therapy is, and two, what you use it for?
So ozone, let's go to my chemistry degree here. So oxygen is two oxygen atoms joined together, and they've got these little tiny negative ions on them. They're quite reactive. But if you use UV light when you're flowing oxygen through and blast it, it creates an O3. So you've got three oxygen atoms joined together. And because it's such an unstable bond, the third oxygen atom is almost like an antioxidant or an oxidant in the area, and it will actually dissociate from the O2 and go around and kill off bugs, bacteria, parasites, fungus. So it's a really good anti something, depending on how you use it. But the beauty of it is what's left? Oxygen. So then you're oxygenating the tissues and the cells there as well, which helps with inflammation and healing and repair. So I use it so often. I use it for gums. I use it for disinfecting teeth. I use it for disinfecting jawbone, and I use it as a mouthwash for my patients because it's so natural. It's literally the ozone layer is
Yeah.
what we're using. The only question around ozone is if you inhale too much of it, your lungs don't have the antioxidants to it can damage your lungs. That's what lots of people say, but you just don't breathe in and use high volume aspiration when you're using it next to the area that you're targeting it. And because it's so reactive, it's already done its business before it would get anywhere near your lungs a lot of the time, unless you were literally going over it.
Okay, which you just don't want to do then. But that's
No.
fascinating that you say you use it as a mouthwash, because, I try not to go to the dentist now, which I know is not healthy, because they give you these really toxic mouthwashes to gargle with. And because I gave up as many chemicals as I possibly could in my healing
Mm,
journey, what's in those mouthwashes that they give you? I mean, what's in, I know so many people that use those, alcohol-based
mm.
mouthwashes. And can you talk us through what you think they do to the body?
They just create a dysbiosis in the bugs that are living there because they're so toxic. One is they have either hydrogen peroxide or alcohols in them, and what that does is it kills a lot of the good and the bad bacteria, which is not ideal. From the other perspective, they've got synthetic like aromas and e numbers for tastes in there, and they look like a translucent color, don't they? So they've even got
They do.
colorings in them. So then your body's got to detoxify from that as well. And even if you're rinsing and spitting, obviously some's going to be absorbed.
So what would you use as a mouthwash? I mean, I use one that's myrrh and lavender. So what would...
Perfect. Yeah, I use essential oils. I use ozone water. But ozone water, let's not forget, is very powerful as well. So you don't want to be using that all the time because it kills good and bad bacteria if you use too much of it and it's too highly
Okay.
concentrated. So my favorite thing is coconut oil pulling for
Yeah.
balancing the microbiome, right? And every morning I do that. I'm religious with it.
Oh, I am so glad you said that.
I did a bit of a project at university because obviously I went in there with my eyes open, and we had a hygiene project, and I looked at the research behind coconut oil pulling. This was several years ago now, and even then there was scientific papers which were saying that coconut oil pulling actually, if it does nothing else, it mildly coats the surfaces of the teeth, and between the two cohorts 50% less plaque and calculus was stuck to the teeth of those patients that coconut oil pulled for only 5 minutes a day. I recommend 20
Oh,
minutes a day.
wow.
So that's huge. The other thing is, what happens is when you've not got the plaque and the bacteria on there, the gums and everything tightens up. So the thing is, there's lots of other reasons why the gums could be leaking. It could be pressure on teeth. It could be clenching at night time without knowing, or it could be grinding teeth without knowing. And don't forget, our teeth are held into our bone through ligaments. And if they're taking more load than they should, then a lot of the time they become leaky and loose because they need to be protected and not fused to our bone, because our bone would push it out, which is a strange world, isn't it? Because it's a crystal, it's a shell, it's not a living organism. So but oil pulling itself coats the teeth for sure, prevents plaque and calculus. And if you read a lot of the Ayurvedic stuff, it actually mildly detoxes your system, because if you look at oil and you look at our cells have a phospholipid bilayer around them, which is an oil itself. And then you look at the coconut oil, and that means that they can join together quite easily, a bit like when you're washing up and you have soap float to the surface and all the oil just like mixes with it and it all groups together. When you have coconut oil, it can dip its fingers into your bloodstream under your tongue and pull out those oil-based toxins to detox a little bit. And I mean, there's books been written about how it can cure everything, but I don't know about that, but they're saying do it like 3 times a day. But for me, it definitely reduces the load on the system. And if you think about the action of pushing your tongue up in between the teeth and sucking it through, if you've got root canals or if you've got infections in your system or you've got gum disease, it's pulling all of that infection into the oil and then you're spitting out. So it's reducing the bacterial load or the infection load within the system to help you handle it more day in, day out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's completely changed my mouth. I love doing it, and it also whitens your teeth as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes the stains out of it for sure.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. I will just say here, do not spit it down your loo or your basin because
Yes.
it does block it. So
I've
just
been
put it
there
in.
too.
Yeah. So just pop it in your bin or in your compost bin. That's what I do.
Yes.
So I now want to talk to you. So I've done a podcast with Patrick McEwen from Oxygen Advantage about the Batico. I can never pronounce it. Batico method. Is that the right
I say
pronunciation?
Buteyko.
Buteyko. I know. I can never remember if I've got it right. And the difference that breath work makes to the shape of your mouth and through the shape of your mouth, the different effects that it has. So can you talk us through, from a dentistry perspective, how mouth breathing can help completely change? Can it alleviate all that surgery and straightening of teeth, wisdom teeth extraction? Give me your thoughts on that
Absolutely.
one.
It's a huge topic. And for
Mm.
me, it starts with, well, the growth. Let's just talk about the craniofacial system. And that grows through the functional matrix theory. And it's suggested that 40% is genetic growth, right? What your parents give you. The other 60% is epigenetic growth, which is how you breathe, how you swallow, how you chew your food, and what types of food you chew, and how you influence and what food and information you're taking in, and the diet that you're using with the minerals. So if we think about that 60%, that means that we've got 60% to influence, which is over 50% is huge. So we can influence
Yeah.
maximum genetic potential, well, more than maximum genetic potential through these habits that we do. So the first thing is breastfeeding, number one. And even before that is just checking that the baby does not have a tongue tie or a lip tie and that they can feed properly, or at least bottle feed in the same motion as a breast would be milked. And what that creates is a tongue sealed to the roof of the mouth, or a tongue that's using its strength to milk and to push things out, because that then grows. The way that our upper jaw grows is through the tongue position being up in the roof of the mouth and pushing up and back and growing it. And, you can check your babies and you can literally just open the lower jaw down like this, and their tongue should be suction to the roof of the mouth. And if they are, that means that they breathe through their nose all the time. But if they don't, then we need to work on how they or why they're not, and then look into the other reasons. And a lot of the time it can be tongue ties and the tongue's tethered to the lower jaw, or lip ties normally to do with feeding mostly, but so tongue ties is the main one to look for. Now, as we grow and develop, and if we start to mouth breathe, let's say we get allergies, we live in a toxic world, you can't breathe through your nose, your upper jaw's not growing properly, so your nose isn't supported, so your sinuses aren't growing and developing because the tongue's not in the roof of the mouth and it's not swallowing in the right way. Then what happens is the mouth comes open as a fail-safe to breathe, and it's actually really a survival mechanism to breathe through the mouth. We shouldn't be doing it at all. And it's only in those exhaustive moments, when we're running, fight or flighting, or we're in a stressful environment, that's when we should be mouth breathing to get to change the chemistry of the body and to actually run away or to fight. And what happens then is, if you're doing that constantly over time, from a dental perspective, if the mouth's open, the teeth start coming down and the jaw starts growing down, which then holds your lower jaw back. Because if you imagine your top jaw is coming down with gravity, the lower jaw, when it closes, is trapped back further, which makes it harder to nasal breathe. Because as the jaw comes down and more narrow, guess the most important thing for everyone to take away from this is the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose.
Okay,
Right?
so the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. Yes, I've never thought of that.
Exactly the same. So if you've not got your tongue in the roof of the mouth, not got a nice wide dental arch, your floor of the nose is going to be vaulted and palated, which means it's going to be harder to breathe through your nose, because there's a deviated septum because it can't fit in, or there's things not quite working, or the cartilage isn't supported because your jaw's not grown outwards, because it's not growing in the upwards and forwards motion, it's growing in the downwards and narrowing. So that's from the structural perspective. So then it makes it's a vicious circle, because then it makes it harder to breathe through your nose. And when it's harder to breathe through your nose, you're constantly mouth breathing. When you're constantly mouth breathing, you're in fight or flight all the time. You're dumping all that carbon dioxide out. You're not resting and digesting at nighttime. You're not sleeping in a deep sleep cycle. It's making you more prone to neurological conditions, because you're not. At nighttime there's I think it's called the glymphatic system, which actually your brain shrinks 60% and detoxifies, and that gets flushed in your cerebral spinal fluid and carried away. And if you're not in your deep sleep cycle, you're not actually getting that lymphatic pump, which means that you're actually even more prone, because you've got your toxins left in your brain, to have these
Yep.
conditions. So us influencing all of these things make it so important to help kids grow and develop to their maximum genetic potential. And if we change the way that we breathe and try and influence our nasal breathing, and that can be through wearing nasal dilators to hold the nose open while you sleep. That can be through mouth taping by closing the lips together. But we've just got to make sure there's enough room in the mouth to allow for all of these things and to change all the habits. Because if we start doing these things in a growing child and they can't breathe, they're going to give themselves sleep apnea, which means they're going to clench and grind and do things more. And clenching and grinding at nighttime is usually due to a collapsible airway. And that means that you imagine that the airway is a pipe of muscles. And I learned this from Patrick as well at one of his conferences. And actually, if you imagine your diaphragm's in your lungs and it's breathing from down here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what happens if you breathe really deeply, really quickly, trying to breathe? It collapses at the top. And when that collapses at the top, you can't breathe at all. So what do you have to do? Clench your
Clench
teeth
your teeth.
and try and breathe.
Yeah.
Or bend your jaw forward to open it and allow you to breathe. And again, what does that do? Puts you into fight or flight. So then you're
Yep.
constantly going into fight or flight. And then you Kids, the most obvious thing is bedwetting, getting up in the middle of the night, having night terrors. They're all the signs that you've got sleep disordered breathing and you're clenching and grinding your teeth quite a lot at night time.
I didn't know that bedwetting was. That's very interesting. I mean, I do a lot of posts on social media about dandelions because they
Yes.
are so nutritional for you, and everybody comments and goes, "Oh, that bedwetting weed," and it's like, no, it's detoxifying your kidneys, and it's a
Yes.
cracking one. But I didn't know that bad breathing habits were to do with bedwetting. That
It's
is fascinating.
exactly. So when you're breathing through your mouth and you're changing your oxygen and carbon dioxide within your system, you're putting yourself into fight or flight. What happens when you're in fight or flight? Your smooth muscle relaxes to allow you to go further, to do more. Your blood vessels dilate and get all of the waters into these places where you don't want them. And what's your bladder? Smooth muscles. When it relaxes and all the water goes in it, you need to wet your bed or
Of
you're not waking up.
course.
So adults, it presents as getting up in the night to go for a wee all the time, and kids, it's bedwetting because they don't control it yet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes total sense. And it also, I think, kind of goes hand in hand as well with, snoring and
Mm,
sleep apnea. There's that, if you're getting up and going for a wee in the night, there's a very good chance you're snoring at night.
yes,
All of that is to do with mouth breathing at night. Is that right?
absolutely, absolutely. And the hardest thing is if you're an adult and you've already had orthodontics when you're young and you've had teeth removed, and then you've created your smile around the position where your jaws didn't grow, instead of trying to expand the jaws, it means guess where your tongue's going to go? It's going to go back into the airway if there's not enough room in the cage of the mouth. So then what happens is you clench and grind, or you have to mouth breathe more at night time. So then we have to really biohack your system to try and get you to a place where you've got space in your mouth for your tongue. You can open, you don't have to open it to breathe, or you don't have to clench on your teeth to breathe and to keep the pipe there. And I mean, the biggest thing for people to take away and try, which I tell most of my patients, is get some nasal dilators to sleep in. And the brand that I found to be the best after a couple of years of researching are Mutes. So like Mutes, and you can get them online or on Amazon or wherever you want to shop.
We will
Um,
put it in the show notes.
yeah, it's a good one. And then start mouth taping on top of that, because then you can ensure that you're breathing through your nose and mouth taping on top of that. Now, what happens sometimes is if there's not enough space in the mouth, you'll still keep ripping your tape off at night. Um, but then we need to work out. I normally go through a period of airway stabilization with my patients, which is getting their jaw into a better lower position, so further forward, and then actually taping over the top of it then. And these appliances in the low jaw actually allow the teeth to slide across. Because if you've got a very deep bite and your jaw's locked in, you're not going to be able to grind your teeth or clench your teeth. You're not going to grind your teeth, you can clench your teeth, and you have to be clenching all night, which is going to damage your teeth more than it should. But then you are mouth breathing. So there's so many things to think about. So normally what I do is just try and put a little BPA-free plastic appliance in the lower teeth, just to allow things to like slide across, which just keeps it as simple as possible.
Okay, I need to get one of those because I'm ever since 2/3 of my tooth fell out because of the dentist, I now grind my teeth, which I've never done before in my life, and it's really infuriating. So also Oxygen Advantage do a really good mouth tape. I can't remember the name of it. Can you
Myotape,
Myotape? That's right. Yeah, and we'll put that in the show note
and that's
as
great for
well.
kids. Great for kids because then they can actually like open their mouths if they really need to.
Yes, and then if they vomit or something during the night,
Yes.
because you just don't know if a child is going to do, or indeed an adult if you've been on the lash, but you might want that little hole in your mouth. So it's been a very strange time in the health of mankind since 2020, but I think that something incredibly good has come out of it, and I think people are beginning to wake up to what I'm going to say quite honestly is lies of allopathic medicine. And how do you feel about dentistry? Do you think more and more people are searching out people like yourself?
Massively. So I didn't even have an Instagram account that I did for dentistry literally a year ago, and it's just completely blown up in less than 1 year. So people are so aware of all these things now. And actually, when we came back after not working for 3 months in dentistry, which was just crazy,
Crazy.
um, we had so many new patients. So many people have spent that time learning,
Yeah.
having the time to research and wanting their amalgams out, or understanding where the bite in the airway is and how that affects their system. So I believe that this has been a massive, illuminating thing, good and bad. And we're all on that journey together, and we all need to support each other. And I think everyone is really, pulling together, and it's quite exciting to see where things lead. And I'm very grateful to what's happened now on reflection, because there's so many more people that 2, 3 years ago wouldn't have been aware of this at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I first watched The Truth About Cancer, I remember my ex-husband just taking the piss out of me, going, "Oh, they're just selling this to make money." I'm
Yeah,
going, "They're selling it because they need to fund their work,
yeah,
because let's
yeah,
face it, big pharma ain't funding it."
yeah.
um, and so I think that's really important to know, that everybody that's putting everything out is doing the best they can to get their information out. And I know that you work online, so I want everybody to tell you to tell everyone how they can find you, because I know you work online as well as in person, and you have a fantastic course on your webpage. So could you tell us a bit about that, please?
Of course, yeah. So I obviously work predominantly 5 days a week in clinic, and which is where I can do the most good, right? By helping support people in the way that I know how. But if I do online sessions for people around the world that are looking for some direction, really, on which route to take, from someone who lives truly holistically, as well, as much as I know with the knowledge I have right now, thinking about the way that I think and which way I would go if I was in their position. And then my course is obviously newly released, but it's been really fundamental. I wanted it to be my first course that's been released because of the importance of breathing, the importance of that influencing that 60% of the epigenetic factors in kids. Because if we can do that young enough, we get to get our kids breathing, swallowing, and chewing in the right way. And if they're growing and developing in the right way, which means they're going to need minimal dentistry, have minimal disease because they're in their rest and digest. They're only flighting when they need to, and that's a myofunctional program. And we've had so much fun with setting that up and getting all the kids on board. And the only thing that's holding me up at the minute is Brexit and me trying to get these things to these kids. But anyway.
Okay. But adults can do your course as well. I know it's designed for children, but actually, I don't think it, most of us had no knowledge of this information when
No.
we were younger. So I actually don't think it's a bad idea for adults to be doing it as well, really, because there is so much to learn. And I think it's a pretty good idea. Could you tell us where they can get this course, where they can look you up? You've got your webpage, The Wonder of Wellness, I believe. So if you can just tell us the name of the course, the webpage, how people can find you, or your social media.
Yeah, so I do the most on Instagram at the moment, and that's biological_dentist. I The website is wonderofwellness.co.uk, and that's just going to be revamped. So hopefully, who knows, in a couple of weeks, completely live with the new sessions. There's online sessions to book in, which are like 20-minute calls. You can bring pictures, x-rays, and I'll have a look and provide my advice. And then the myofunctional program is more aimed at kids for the moment, but I'm definitely going to do a more adult focused one. And the kids course, all of the mums and dads join in at the same time. So I did this myself. 3 years ago, before my journey, I actually started teaching myself the new patterns of my swallowing and breathing and chewing and sleeping and, all of those type of things. And I've noticed huge changes in my balance, my posture, my tone, my calmness. I can get so much more done. I'm not shattered by the end of the night because we're doing podcasts late until the end of the night. It's interesting that I would have thought like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would have been probably flagging at 6 p.m. most nights, right? But now I've got living better. Biohacking is definitely a passion of mine. And I think large part is breathing, right? A large part.
Yeah. I love biohacking, but yes, I think the breath work, meditation for me, I couldn't start my day without meditating. And if I have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get my meditation in, I will. And do you meditate?
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually do meditation barefoot in the grass, and
Yeah, I do.
um I listen to Elizabeth Peru, and I listen to what's going on in the galaxy and how that's going to influence our energy potentially. So I know I'm ready for the day then.
So I think we are out of time. And I just want to say thank you so, so much for coming on the podcast. It has been enlightening talking to you. So many people don't understand how complicated dentistry is and how simple it is. It kind of goes hand in hand, so that has been brilliant. So thank you so much for coming on the Wellness Way today, Dr. Sebastian Lomas. Thank you.